Today on the Daily Bellringer, we're taking a look at the California Gold Rush. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bellringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. Also, I'd love to see your answer to question number 5 in the comments below. So, the California Gold Rush, if we go back to January 24th, 1848, barely a week before the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed ending the Mexican-American War, there was a guy named James Wilson who was a carpenter, and he was working on a mill for a guy named John Sutter. And this mill that he was working on was located right on the American River near Coloma, California. And as he's working on this mill, he looks down and he sees something sparkling there on the ground or in the water, and he reaches down, picks it up, takes it back to John Sutter. They look at it together and they, test it and they figure out, hey, it's gold. All right, now once they find gold here at Sutter's Mill, they want to keep it a secret. But the word gets out and newspapers start reporting that gold has been found there. And so, people start rushing there. Now, a lot of people were kind of leery, I guess, of this news and didn't really necessarily trust it until late 1848. President Polk actually confirms and says, yes, gold has been found in California. And once that happens, people really start rushing to California to get rich quick. That was the big idea. And so in 1848, the number of Americans living in California was actually less than 1,000. But by the end of 1849, there's over 100,000 Americans living there in California. So that's where we get the term 49ers, because most of these people move into California in the year 1849. Now, at first, when the first miners or gold prospectors arrived there, finding the gold wasn't too difficult. There's actually a lot of gold that is found, although we'll talk about later that very few people actually got rich from it. But at first it was like I said, it was relatively easy to find, but then they have to start digging, and then eventually they start using hydraulic mining. What I mean by hydraulic mining is they would blast the earth with high-powered hoses and basically wash the earth away to look for the gold. A lot of the gold miners or gold prospectors actually did panning for gold, where they would take basically like a plate, dip it down into a stream or a river and pull up sediment from the bottom of the river, and then sift out the dirt to see if they could find any gold flakes in there. The people moving to California came several different routes. There were some that came from the east all the way around South America by boat, or they would go down to Panama and cross Panama and then come by boat over to the west coast. But many traveled along the Oregon Trail or California trails heading to California. But one big misconception about the California Gold Rush is that this was purely an American event. About 80% of the newcomers to California were Americans, but there were people coming from South America, from Europe, from Australia. There were many that came from China, and actually to this day there's a strong Chinese American community there in California that was really established here during the California Gold Rush. But as people were rushing to California, of course, we have the boom towns that begin to appear. Basically, these things that were small villages before, and they turn into basically cities almost overnight. Cities like San Francisco that were already there, they have huge population explosions there within their towns. But what's interesting, though, is, of course, as these little towns pop up and overcrowding happens, we begin to see more, I guess you could say, violence or lawlessness or, gambling and, things like that going on, and really there was no police force or anything to handle these things. So many people began to form their own little vigilante groups to handle the crime that was taking place in these towns. Now, the gold rush, there was a significant amount of gold that was found. Actually, the gold rush doubled the world supply of gold, but ironically, there was very few people that actually got rich from mining the gold. Those who really did get rich were the merchants who were selling goods to these gold miners. And really, once they got out in these these mining camps, they could charge whatever they wanted for goods, and it's ridiculous the prices that they were charging. Some examples of this: there were accounts of people being charged $40 for a meal, which may not seem that extreme today, but in late 1840s, that was the equivalent of maybe close to $1,200, or a dozen eggs being like $90 in today's money, or buying a pair of boots being almost the equivalent of $3,000 today. So it was amazing the prices that were being charged. The peak of the gold rush was reached in 1852 when they mined about $81 million worth of gold out of the ground, and then from there it basically gradually declined. But what was really the important impact of the California gold rush was this rush, of course, of population to California. And California, of course, quickly had enough people to apply for statehood, and in late 1849, they do apply for statehood. Their application for statehood, of course, sets off a firestorm of debate because, again, we have that issue of free or slave states coming into the Union. And so what we see is what's known as the Compromise of 1850 that takes place, the important piece of legislation that leads us closer to the Civil War. Okay, so hopefully you learned something there, and thanks for watching.